The Week in Review with David Davis. Hello, welcome to episode 7 of the Week in Review. This week we're going to talk about war crimes in Ukraine by Russia. We're going to talk about the Extradition Treaty and Julian Assange. And we're going to talk about the blockade of Ukrainian grain and the impact on global food shortages. Well, there's been a lot of talk this week about whether some of the latest Russian actions in Ukraine are acts of terrorism, and frankly, I think they plainly are. What is important to me is that they are probably war crimes. But let's look at what they've done. We've had a missile strike on a busy shopping centre, which killed 20 people, 20 civilians, and this was nowhere near what you might consider a proper military target. And it's not the first time civilians have been targeted. Train stations have been hit, theatres, hospitals, they've all been targeted. Now, what does the law say about targeting civilians? Well, the relevant law arises from the Geneva Convention. And what that says is that civilian populations shall not be the object of attack. Acts or threats of violence, the primary purpose of which is to spread terror among the civilian populations, are prohibited. It's clear. Targeting civilian populations and civilian locations is a war crime. Now, Russian generals, therefore, are guilty of war crimes, and they must, in my view, be identified and brought to justice, certainly listed publicly so that they can face travel bans, and if they do travel to nations that enforce the Geneva Convention, which is pretty much every nation in the world, they should face prosecution. In the last few weeks, the Home Secretary approved the extradition of Julian Assange to America. Now, the simple truth is, Assange won't get what we think of as a fair trial in the US. And in addition to that, there's a wider issue of imbalance in the UK-US extradition treaty. When America requests an extradition from Britain, they have to have reasonable suspicion, and the Home Secretary must process the request. When Britain requests an extradition from America, we have to demonstrate probable cause, and the American Secretary of State may process that request. You're not forced to process that request. And the effect of this shows up in the statistics. Many more people are sent to America than are sent to Britain to face criminal trial. Those extradited to the United States face an alien justice system, frankly. They're frog-marched in chains, they're jailed with hardened criminals, they're denied access to legal papers, they face really coercive plea bargain systems which essentially say either plead guilty or face a huge length of time in prison. If you plead guilty, then we'll treat you a bit more kindly. That sort of thing does not give the sort of justice system that we're used to in the United Kingdom. And of course, it's not just Julian Assange. I'm no great fan of Julian Assange. Indeed, I disapprove of some of the things he did. But it's not just him. In recent times, there's been Mike Lynch, who's still in this process. There's a NatWest 3 before that, Christopher Tappin. People who didn't, in my view, get a proper British style of justice in their trials. So we need reform. We should basically say to the Americans, there are going to be no more extraditions until we've got reform, other than for terrorism and serious crimes of violence. So we're not going to let people off from those things. We'll still extradite those, but until we get this corrected, we should say no more commercial crimes, no more political crimes. We're going to basically give our citizens the same protection as the American Constitution gives to Americans until we've sorted this out. There's a global catastrophe on the horizon, with the prospect of global food shortages hitting some of the poorest people in the world. Grain and other foodstuffs cannot get out of Ukraine via the Black Sea, causing prices to rise. Maize, wheat, corn, sunflower oil are all affected. 50 million people are now on the brink of disaster. And it's put £300 on our food bill too. Now, the Prime Minister has been calling on Putin to end the blockade, But Russia actually denies putting in place a blockade, saying it's not stopping us moving food from Ukraine to the rest of the world. So we should call his bluff. Britain and others should offer to help clear the mines preventing the exports, and perhaps escort ships in and out to carry the grain in and out. And if Russia objects, then we know that they really are trying to starve the rest of the world. Oh, that's the final part of this week's episode. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, share it, because this is quite an important part these days of this particular MP's interaction with the public.